Testing. Tashi delay, everybody. Welcome to Sunday meditation on this beautiful fall day. So glad to see all of you here today. Old friends and new friends. Real quick, who is here for your first time today? Raise your hand, don't be shy. Look around, there's lots of you guys. So thank you so much for being here. If you have any questions afterwards, sometimes the teacher will ask for questions. If so, raise up, get the microphone so that people online can hear. And if there isn't time till afterwards, then look for volunteers will try to help you with your questions, okay? But before we get started, we have a couple announcements, and there's some good stuff here, so listen closely. If you haven't already silenced your cell phones, please do so at this time, and put your phones away so you can be fully present for the talk and meditation. If you must use your phone, please do so outside the meditation hall. Then, first event of many is we invite you to join Geshe Lobsang Tenzin for our weekly Medicine Buddha practice in person and online at 6 p.m. on Tuesdays. This week, and after the Medicine Buddha meditation is the Tuesday evening talk. This week, the talk will be on 8 verses of mind training, verses 5 and 7. Then on Wednesday at 7 p.m., the Drepung Loseling monks will conduct evening prayers for His Holiness the Dalai Lama's long life and other teachers. On Thursdays at 4:30 p.m., the Drepung Loseling monks will conduct the Protector Puja for smooth journeys, successive interviews, and medical treatments, new businesses, etc. Then this happens only once a year, but the monks are offering our traditional filling of statues and stupas following a sacred consecration ceremony in person and via our streaming channels on Tuesday, December 9th at 6:30 p.m. We invite you to drop off, or those of you online, to ship your statues and stupas used for personal devotion and practice to be filled and consecrated by the monks. We also have a limited selection available in the gift shop if you would like to buy one to have consecrated for your own personal practice. Statue drop-off and the ship receiving deadline is Tuesday, December 2nd. Then, next, the Venerable Monks of Drepung Loseling Monastery and the Mystical Arts of Tibet Tour will be performing not one, but 2 powerful healing pujas. The first one on November 25th, yes, put that, not that down. On November 25th will be a Medicine Buddha Puja for physical and mental health and well-being. Then, on December 2nd, there'll be a Green Tara Puja for protection, healing, and prosperity. You're invited to submit names for those not present to benefit from these practices. Then, last but not least, is our annual year-end retreat. This will be held on Freedom from the 4 Attachments from December 27th through the 30th. It will consist of 3 sessions each day and is open to all. It is free for current members. So this is a good time to renew your membership or to get a membership. If you'd like to know more about being a member, we have applications in the library. And all that information can be found online, not only about membership, but everything I just said. So you can look online and in the lobby. Now, if anyone is interested in volunteer opportunities to get more involved in supporting our center and programs, please see me or our volunteer coordinator, Michael Duffel. And last but not least, there is a donation box near the entrance of and to this room. Your generous support helps us to continue to offer programs and services like this to our Atlanta community and to those around the world through our online platforms. Now, as is our practice, please stand as we invite our teacher, Geshe Lobsang, to come in for today's practice.
Good morning. How are you doing? I hear good, very good, super good, not so good. Better than what? Better now. Okay, that's good. Wonderful. We're going to do some meditation, yes? Is there anyone here who has not done any meditation before? Wow, this is the first time, 100%, even the little ones here, precious ones. That's great. In that way, then maybe I don't need to say much, but I'd like to hear from you, just a little bit about when you do meditation, what are you doing or not doing? Pardon me? Not enough. No, I said, what are you doing or what are you not doing when you are meditating? In myself to go forward. When you are meditating, you are doing something to go forward, advance yourself in some. Okay, yes, please.
I typically ask for guidance and then listen for the guidance.
Okay, so the kind of meditation that we are doing is you are seeking guidance, asking guidance from some higher source. So you are attuning to higher source, surrendering perhaps, so that we let our egos down so we can receive. That's great. Yeah, there are many forms of meditations are like that, yes, of course. What else? Yes?
Guided meditation just to calm the mind in the morning and relax.
So when you are doing meditation, you do the guided meditation, you listen to some guided
using an
app. Okay, that's wonderful, like the Headspace, or what app do you use?
Insight Timer.
Insight Timer. Wonderful. Anyone else doing that? Insight Timer, there is Headspace, there are all kinds of apps. Yes. Rob, you said that you...
I said I also use Insight Timer.
Okay, wonderful. That's great. So you are guided by the guided instructions in the Insight Timer, and it leads you to what? Gets you grounded for the day, yes. That's wonderful.
For at least 10 minutes, maybe.
10 minutes. Yes. That's good. Yeah, that 10 minutes, I think to some degree the effect of that will last longer. Yes, that is true. Great. Yes?
I have this phrase that says, it's like it cleans out the cobwebs, like it kind of cleans out the baggage that we carry. We're attached to stuff that has happened, good or bad. And so if you take the good, you take the bad attachment too, So it's like, just like how to clear your mind so you can start fresh. And especially the compassion meditation, like it just teaches you how to not actively hate your enemies. Try to wish them well. They're all part of the family.
Wonderful. So you do, one of the meditations you do is compassion meditation to clear certain ways that we relate to others that may be not very helpful, but also developing ways that you can relate to others with more healthy ways. That's great, yeah. Yes?
It seems like it tamps down circular, repetitive patterns of thought that can be pretty counterproductive.
How do you do that?
Well, once you clear your mind to
Great, thank you. So for you, the meditation that you are doing is to really a way to clear mind, so that you are not caught in this like this rumination, that comes to going with whatever may be bothering you, just getting stuck in that. So the meditation is to clear that, so that you can have you can be free from that ruminations.
You get new ideas.
Huh?
You get new ideas.
You get new ideas, new insights. Yes.
You don't have to break through. There's no barrier.
There's no more barrier. Wonderful. Yes. Yeah. If we are caught in all kinds of issues that we're just kind of stuck, that it does undermine our cognitive abilities, the ability to creativity, for new insights. Then, yeah, that's wonderful. Thank you so much. Yes, please.
Your question, when I'm thinking about answering, what do I do and what do I not do? I'm trying to be in the present. I'm trying not to do anything, and yet thinking about how to answer your question made me realize I almost always meditate for a shorter period of time than I intended to, except for when I get horizontal and fall asleep.
Then you do a long meditation, sleep meditation. Okay.
So it's still time oriented, right? Which is
Yes. So, but that is interesting, that what you are saying is that, like the meditation, this kind of phrasing of question, what you are doing, what you are not doing, that in sometimes we see that meditation is not striving, not doing, not pushing into, but rather, letting down this kind of going, but rather resting that. And it's in that sense, non-striving, not doing. All those things are wonderful. Yeah, those are all great. And there are probably many more ways that what we are doing when we are meditating. Each individual would have a different way of doing this. But also, because when we think about the meditation, there are many different kinds of meditation. That you can be meditating on forgiveness. You can be meditating on self-compassion. You can be meditating on, expanding our kind of circle of concern, making on inclusiveness instead of biases, to undo our biases. And like that, we can be meditating on impermanence, the reality of impermanence. We can be meditating on our interdependence, gratitude. That there are so many different meditations. You can be meditating on, some receiving some grace and or the blessings, of the enlightened beings. If this is where you are, that how if that resonates with you, if you maintain that worldview, that there are higher powers that you can attune to, then that with that receptive mind, openness, you could feel like, you are being changed. So there are many ways of doing this. Yes, of course. I would say that, from the Buddhist tradition, and Buddhist tradition has a long history of doing meditation. Of course, the Buddha, spent 6 years before becoming enlightened, going through some really serious meditations. It's called the Lotukawa, 6 years of austerity, the extent, intense practice. And when the Buddha was exploring, the ways for the greater happiness, well-being, for greater freedom from our own ongoing suffering, like that. In India, like that's like 2,500 years or so, after almost 2,600 years or so ago, that's when Buddha lived. There was already an existing tradition of meditation, the dhyanas, the concentrations, the samadhi, like that, high levels of that already. So it's the Buddhist tradition has this long history of investigating, adjusting, cultivating these inner tools, inner skills, inner competencies, if you will, that adds to our well-being, that transforms to some degree, gradually, our suffering, the emotional suffering, like that. A lot of the suffering is emotional. I mean, there are actual physical needs when we don't meet, we suffer physically, starvation and like that, illnesses, all those things. But a lot of the suffering is emotional also, right? Particularly when basic needs are met, are we all fine, that happy, and no issues, no struggles? When we have enough food in our refrigerator, enough money in the bank to pay the rent and meet the basic needs and like that, like that. Certainly not, like that. One of the great masters in the early centuries called Aryadeva. This was one of the Nalanda masters. Nalanda was a very big, perhaps the biggest university, in ancient times in India, certainly from around 1st century AD to 12th centuries or so. It flourished with over 10,000 scholars, studying, writing, debating, meditating about this, understanding our inner world. Aryadeva was one of them. And he says that chola yiki tungete thamenala lukusun tunginiki chitende nyere nyere chivarches. He wrote it in Sanskrit, of course I'm reciting it in Tibetan, because those early texts were translated in Tibetan. That they exist in Tibet now. That most of the early teachings like this. You see in the altar, the beautiful cloths there, wrapped in, and these are texts. The Tibetan style, it's loose leaf, usually, traditionally printed woodblock printing, but these are printed in modern, machines, or in the form of those books also compiled. These are the teachings, by those great masters. Buddha's original teachings in 100 volumes or so. That in Tibetan exists what's called the Tengyur Shastra, the commentaries on the early Buddha's teachings. These exist in 225 volumes, like the big volumes. And these are on everything from epistemology to ethics to philosophy, like the Madhyamika philosophy, the mind-only philosophy, understanding the medicine and all kinds. And Aryadeva, he said that, in this verse from his text called Shigapa, 400 verses on emptiness or the reality. He said that for the privileged, it is the mental anguish. For the underprivileged, it is the physical struggle or the anguish. In brief, in ordinary world, we are confronted with these struggles day in and out. So that's underprivileged, materially underprivileged. If we don't have enough food to eat, if we don't have clean water to drink, if we don't have money to get the medicine or access to medicine, America is such a rich country, and we are talking about that, whether there's going to be affordable medicine or not. If we don't have that, those who don't have access to medicines and like that, of course, if you are ill, you're going to, that's going to affect. If you don't have enough food, that the children are dying. That how many children die of malnutrition every day in the world? To this day, in the 21st century, 3,000 children are dying every day. That's what I read. I hope I'm right. This data is correct. I just recently read. It's just shocking, isn't it? For this, with malnutrition, with not having enough, nutritious food or no food. So basic needs, physical needs, are important part of our, to live well. Medicine, food, clean water, the clothing, and so forth and so on. Having the shelter, otherwise what's a struggle to live on the streets with no house and like that? How does that affect? Like that. So many people are still struggling. But then when we do have the physical needs met, are we happy? Life is good. There's no. Certainly not. I mean, that how many people struggle with the depression, anxiety, despite basic needs met, with the burnout, the loneliness, all these things. Actually, some of these sufferings seem to be even more prevalent in the advanced countries, materially advanced countries. Yeah, so what is happening here? We have emotional needs, emotional needs. And when those emotional needs are not met, we suffer. If we don't feel safe, that impacts our experience, lives. That. And if we don't, that sense of safety, the connection, and like that, if that is not, if we don't have around us, we feel more and more lonely, more and more, anxious, and like that. So, therefore, when we think about meditation, I think, meditation is not a substitute for those basic needs. It's important to keep in mind. Physical resources are important. We have to work on that. But when we think about meditation, we need to understand that physical or the material needs alone are not enough for a quality life. We need something of the inner resources also. Inner resources. And those inner resources, they have to do with a sense of safety, fundamentally, that. Inner resources have to do with how can we regulate our emotional states. How can we regulate our behavior, our actions, behaviors, reactions, and like that? These are inner state, our self-control, self-regulation, for example, that. If we are not able to have self-regulation, be able to regulate our behavior, that impulses, the emotions, and like that. Of course, we are human beings, ordinary beings. When we haven't cultivated these abilities, there are dispositions in our system, that for all the different emotions, different, behaviors, and like that. Some of these are not learned in this life, but those dispositions we inherited in the long line of our inheritance from our ancestors, and like that, parents and their parents and so forth, all the way back to the animal ancestors, and like that, Some of them are acquired, acquired dispositions, not innate in this life. That again, whether it's the society, enforce that, through what they teach us, what they tell us, you should do, we should not do, and so forth and so on, in a school or at home. Some of them have to do with the environment, the conditions, the circumstances that where we are growing, if we have the family members struggling themselves and all so forth, and loss and so forth and so on. Where a growing child is not able to receive the proper care, go through neglect or even worse, abuse and like that, of course it's going to impact. It's going to lead to certain kind of experiences, that certain dispositions, that those are acquired in this life. Some of them we actually learn how to, sometimes that we even have, we can come across or something that actually tells us that greed is good. You need to be greed. That's the guiding principle. Is that evolution tells that you survive if you are strong. That you don't have obligation for others. That what's important is you. These are of course extreme. In some ways extreme ideologies and like that can, so these become kind of, when we incorporate as part of our mindset, as our worldview of our, that how we see it, it's going to impact our actions, our feelings, how we feel like that. So therefore the meditation is about cultivating inner skills, enhancing, training in those inner skills that are conducive for our health and well-being, that can promote greater harmony with others, that can, instead of becoming source of suffering, problem, that's what it is. So I think that what we need to, when we think about the meditation, one of the things in the contemplative, this contemplative tradition is what is called the bhagya. It is often translated as heedfulness. Heedfulness. When you are going to do the meditation, are you going to do the meditation to just have fun? Don't get me wrong, fun is, instead of suffering, fun is good, okay. But are you going to do the meditation? Are you just going to have some, high feeling, that's it, excitement for that little while you forget about the miseries of the world and just have little, for that we can do all kinds of things, that we can go for walk, we can go to picnic, we can go to I don't know, people do discourse anymore. The nightclubs, like that, all kind of things, or maybe, every then to have it, a little moment of like that, sometimes people we can take, just feelings, just forget about these things, that take drugs, that in that. For a while, this altered state, that's all those things can be. I'm not saying that some of these, like that, going for picnic, taking a walk, that all these things taking time, that to clear mind, to have that, it's wrong. I mean, these are important parts, absolutely. And some of the ways that we seek that feeling of, high and like that, it may not be helpful, if that gets into addiction and like that, those are necessarily, it's kind of, But in meditation, if we think about meditation is fundamentally about learning to how to live in a way where we can do least harm to ourselves and others. How can live a life that can contribute to greater well-being for us and for those around us. And that's where the heedfulness comes. Heedfulness has to do with this awareness or understanding that what kind of our, I'm not talking about the external conditions and like that, but we talk about that. What way of my engagement, in how I engage in the world, people, neighbors, or my own ups and downs and so forth and so on. What are the certain behaviors and underlying attitudes that are constructive, that are helpful? What are these impulses, our reactions, our tendencies, that when we operate with that undermine our well-being, healthy relationships, and like that. So that awareness is important. That first of all, I think that that's where the heedfulness comes from, understanding what is helpful, what is not helpful. In terms of meditation, has to do with something that we are changing of those inner habits, inner tendencies, like that. So, what are those, actions or the reactions or the behaviors that are harmful, that not helpful? What ways that we engage are helpful for us? That's at the basic. Then that's how it connects to ethics. Ethics, that about how we respond to the situations, people, including in life, that those actions, those decisions, that are they contribute to well-being. It's ethical. The kind of actions and so forth that contribute to harm, the suffering, for us and for others, it's unethical. But that comes from these actions and so forth are led by the underlying attitudes, underlying dispositions. That's what it is. So therefore, when we think about the meditation, heedfulness is one thing to keep in mind. Like that. So if we do notice that we have a tendency to, when something, we have a tendency to see the world in so black and white way. If we are aware that is not a healthy way to go, like that. That's what can lead us eventually to this very extremely divided way of division in the society. Yes, Republicans are good, Democrats are bad. Democrats are good, Republican policies are bad. Like that. So divided, us and others. Looking at this, these are kind of these attitudes, that the way of looking, these are. We can see that how that is problematic, like that. So if we see that how it boils down to all the way down to that our emotions and then the reactions, that what happens from that state, how do we react to someone who doesn't, see eye to eye with us, that what kind of emotions are there? What kind of behaviors that we engage? How does that affect? It's important to reflect on that. Now, to see what would be helpful or not is somewhat, if we reflect, it may be easier. The harder part is to maintain that, that avoid what is, when there are impulses to say, do, act in a certain way that are not healthy, to have some agency there to let go. To, engage in certain way that healthy way to promoting that. That's what we need to learn, like that. How do we do that? So that's why I think one of the ways the meditation, when we think about the very basic part, along with the heedfulness, just some appreciation of what is healthy, what is not healthy, is mindfulness and introspective awareness. Mindfulness and introspective awareness. Mindfulness has to do with to what extent that we can make that part of our mindset. To what extent we can retain that perspective, that information, that what is helpful, what is not. Introspective awareness, or the monitoring awareness, we can say, has to do with our awareness of what our impulses are, where our mind is, what are we, sometimes it may be even we have already acted out, but being aware, hopefully, before we have unleashed, that was venom, when something happened in a harsh way or like that, to notice it. What the introspective awareness or the monitoring awareness, aware of what we are feeling, what impulses are there, what emotions, what, how we are seeing and so forth. If those are heedfulness, remember, if those are not something that we want to be reinforcing, engaging, going with that, then we need to have an agency, a choice. That moment to not just simply go with that, but be able to transform that, at least by, if needed, by disengaging from that, that bringing our attention to somewhere, or bringing a broader perspective to reframe, to, from the broader perspective, see it, reappraise, see it in a different way, change the way that how we, what may be making us feel angry, to what can help us, how we can see, somebody cutting in front of us, driving, that automatic reaction may have come like that, this is nasty person, like that, and we are about to honk or say something really nasty, the catching oneself, monitoring awareness, if you're noticing. In that moment, if we are aware, and we said that, my barking at this person, is not healthy. It can even lead to road rage, where we can end up killing each other. Those things happen. At Atlanta, it has happened. Like they're just simple things. It's, if you notice, if you have the heedfulness, that's not something that, I want to be reacting like that. If that's our mindset, then in that moment, what choice do we have? Can we at least bring our attention to somewhere that, that not keep with that driver who, bring our attention to something, steering, or to maybe, think about something that's else, that disengaging our attention. Or maybe that we are, that we have practiced to bring this, reframe that event that happened, somebody's behavior, cutting in front of, maybe that person didn't see, maybe that person was really in a hurry, that happened. Instead of just saying that this person intentionally to irritate me, to hurt me, did that. That instead of that kind of, to bring a different perspective. If you can do that, you can see that boiling anger just kind of calming down. Reappraise, reframe, right? We have to be able to, but we need to have that, in that moment, often we have no choice. That's why it's so automatic, right? Something happens, we only realize we already have said something nasty, and then have to regret afterwards. Damage is done. But if our monitoring awareness is good enough, catching ourselves, if our choice is built, that in that moment we can at least to bring our attention to somewhere, or tap into that different perspective. And I've heard that actually many people talk about after meditating this like that in terms of like the people cutting in front of you and like that, they are seeing difference. That they're catching you themselves, and then that reframing, quickly, having that choice, and then they see that they calm, and then are able to drive instead of just remaining agitated, and maybe maybe that didn't cause any accident or like that. Next one might be, if I'm so irritated, still stuck with this, and then I'm driving and I fail to notice what is in front of me. Or maybe I can go home and then instead of, saying, hello to my wife, and then seeing what, how are you doing, and then I might just go straight to the couch and then to get the remote controller and to put the TV on and to, like that. Or if the dinner is ready, I might just snap back and say, like something, if I'm irritated. Does that happen? We're irritated at somebody, and then we take it on our children, our, family and like that. It's just, kind of cascades. It's impacting. So basic meditation is about changing our habits, developing this ability to change our habits. For that, we can learn to develop a little bit greater capacity to be present, that a little bit greater awareness of what's going on, what I'm feeling, what are my impulses and so forth, a little bit greater capacity to have that choice, to either to disengage, bring somewhere that can help us calm, or reframe. So that both of these, one is more temporary, other one is can be more sustained. In that way, then if we can, if we can build these skills, abilities on the cushion, in the meditation gym, so to speak, then those carry in our everyday life. Same thing that what we built in the gym, physical strength, it carries beyond the gym. What we built on the cushion, it can carry into the everyday life, maybe a little bit more than 10 minutes, 20 minutes, half an hour. That's why that, like in the meditation communities, they said that 6 times a day, sometimes, that tundu, like that. That's not, and it's not something magic number in 6, that you do this 6 times, that's happened. 6 times is actually that, just to say that 24 hours, if you divide it by the 4 hours each, if you do it for 10, 15 minutes, it's possible that it will carry for another 3, 4 hours. If you can do it again, that can carry for another 3, 4 hours. You can do that again, it's divided into 6 times. But the idea is to do it as often as we can, so that becomes sustained. Eventually, then it becomes part of us. Habits are built like that. That the meditation, eventually, the meditation, if you think in this way that you are doing it, the cultivating this, developing this, eventually when it becomes natural, automatic, then it's called gomme, no meditation, beyond meditation. The goal is to come to a point where we don't need to consciously tap into this. It becomes part of the natural way that we regulate as needed, we adjust as needed, that automatic ways. How do we do that? These three skills. It's a very, we can do it in a number of ways, but one of the very basic ways to do that is how they've been practicing for several thousand years now, and that is by using, if it is comfortable, the breath, anapana, the respiration, breathing in, breathing out, as just simply a way to learn, to develop this ability to be present, more present, here, wherever, here meaning that wherever you are, whether driving, eating, talking to someone, reading, whatever you're doing, present, more present, that we can learn to build that muscle. It's an attention, that bringing attention to where we want to be with the breath, from one breath to the next, to the next, to build that, often in the very beginning, within few breaths, our mind is somewhere else, or just begin to sink, those like that. But how can we stay present? It's a work. So meditation is doing. It's not doing in that sense. It is, you can't be meditating, building that skill when you are sleep, like that. You can't be building a certain, ability if your mind is somewhere else. That you can't play music in the beginning, that piano and like that. If the mind is somewhere else, that your fingers will be all over. That you're not going to be learning. You have to be present. That not distracted. Present. So that's why that we want to learn, build this inner muscle of our attention to where we want it to be with the breath, for example. That this is the gym. That's where we're building that muscle. We want to build that awareness to, if our mind wanders somewhere else or just begin to sink into sleepiness, to notice. Of course, it's easier said than done, so that's why sometimes we need to, in a few seconds, a minute, deliberately check in, how well I'm attending to my breath, that, or if my mind is somewhere else, that. If it is somewhere else, acknowledge and use that choice, build that choice. It can wait, let me come back, bring the attention back to the breath. See that simply doing this, you are building those three things. Greater capacity to stay where you want to be, greater awareness to notice where our mind is, and greater choice to either to bring back, in this case, to the breath. In other cases, it can be for the breath, broader, see it in a different light, and like that. But first, let's learn to bring it back. And then through these three, if these three things that we build, you can see that how this can apply to everything in life. Whatever is in a moment that is necessary for us. A student who is doing homework is able to keep their attention more with the homework. If their mind goes to what is in social media, to impulse to check, they can notice that. In that one, just going into the law and getting lost in that, have the choice to come. That can wait, come back, do the homework. That if we have an impulse, often I get in trouble by acting, maybe not saying, but even like just showing that in my face or the body language or like that, and then it someone else in a disapprovingly judging and like that, that if I This can come here also. That mindfulness is that is with the heedfulness, what is helpful, what is not helpful, that you are able to retain that, stay on that course. If you begin to have the impulse to say something, you are noticing it. In that moment, you can let it go, to come back, bring attention to somewhere else, or to bring a different perspective on that person's. Then you'll be able to, in that real moment, be able to regulate your emotions, regulate your behavior, therefore relationship, and so forth. So let's do this meditation briefly. I will guide you to the extent it is helpful. You can join. Please feel free always to just rest, and pick it up as needed, or just if for 10 minutes or so, if it is easy enough, please follow as fast as you can. Please take a moment to adjust your posture, as we will be sitting for about 10 minutes. So, finding a comfortable posture, whatever that feels. But as you are adjusting that posture, if you do notice any immediate kind of discomfort, like the tightness in your chest, or the heaviness in the shoulders, or tightness in the back, or the neck, and like that, feel free to stretch. Stretch your limb, stretch your body, stretch your neck, or to roll your shoulders. If that helps, soften some of those tightness, tensions in the body. And then, if possible, if it is not very uncomfortable, we can place the body in a position that supports the clarity and the stability of the mind. That way where we can be more present, where our mind is not only not scattered, but also alert. And for that, we can bring our back in the upright position. Just placing the back in the upright position. See if placing the back upright position brings a subtle shift inwards on our energy level. Does it make you a little bit more alert and awake? But bringing attention to our body that is nicely settled on the cushion or in our chair, perhaps if chair, having the feet firmly on the floor. Just bringing attention to this support of chair, cushion, floor, providing our body this stable and comfortable position. See if that leads to a subtle inner shift, whereby we feel a little bit grounded, settled, inner sense of settledness. With our mind alert yet settled, let's here take first, just for 3 rounds or so, to further settle our body and mind. And for that, first just take a few seconds to briefly check in with your body and mind. Bring the attention to your chest or shoulder or neck or face or back. Wherever you bring 1 or 2 places in your body, see what you notice there, what that body landscape, inner landscape, feels like. Is it tense or relaxed or somewhat relaxed? What are the sensations, if any, you notice, like heat, warmth, coolness, or any other sensation? Do they feel pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral? Beyond these physical sensations, let's check in with our other experiences, the mind, what else is going on? Any lingering worries, agitations, or sense of joy, excitement, or a certain sense of ease or unease? What is occupying our mind? With this brief check-in, if we do notice certain tensions in the body and mind, let's take a couple of deep breaths as we breathe in, just taking a slow yet full in-breath, inhaling the refreshing and rejuvenating, nourishing air that is rich with life-giving oxygen, and for that matter, rich with the qualities, properties that nourish our body and mind. Just taking the full in-breath to let it infuse with our whole being, nourishing our body and mind. And as we exhale, slow with full exhalation. With that, releasing or letting go of those tensions of the body and mind that we may be experiencing. Just let the outgoing breath help us release, clear. Letting our body and mind thereby settle in an unfolding sense of ease and calm, whatever degree that may happen. Now with this sense of ease, or connecting to this initial relaxation, if you will, now let's take a few moments to build those inner skills, aware that certain habits, certain reactions, certain dispositions, certain ways that we react behaviorally, with our attitudes, emotions, get us in trouble, others contribute to the greater well-being. With that understanding, in order to manage, regulate, navigate our lives through this such interactions such in our life, seeing the need to have a greater presence of mind, greater ability to notice our impulses and so forth, and greater choice there, whether to keep going with those or to disengage or bring a different perspective. To build these three crucial skill sets, we can do this by placing our attention here in the present, maybe with the breath. As we let our breathing settle to its natural rhythm, notice where you connect with your breath most easily. Is it at the abdomen, as the belly rises and flattens with in-breath and outgoing breath? Or perhaps at the chest, it's a little bit easier for some, as the lungs fill up and empty with in-breath and outgoing breath. Perhaps for others, it may be at the nostrils, where the fresh air enters with inhalation, giving rise to this subtle cool sensation in the nostrils. And as we exhale this warm air through the nostrils, giving rise to that subtle sensation of warmth. Wherever you are able to connect with your breath most easily, more clearly, just bringing your attention there, directing there. And for the next few moments, see if we can sustain our attention with our breath, just one breath at a time, aware of that unfolding sensation of in-breath and outgoing breath, one breath after another for a few breaths, 5, 7, 10 cycles of the breath. As we cultivate this mindfulness of breathing, that is that our ability to keep the breath in our awareness or to sustain our attention here in the present with the breath, it's possible that our mind will wander. And at times we may wonder and we may not be aware. So let's just now and then just briefly check in. Just where our attention is, if it's still with the breath. And in those moments, if we notice that our mind had gone somewhere else, or even just lost that awareness of the breath because it began to sink into the drowsiness, just make a subtle choice, change. That is, if it had gone somewhere, acknowledge and gently use that, exercise that choice to bring it back to the breath. If you notice that it has just lost our awareness of the breath because it began to sink into drowsiness, slightly enhance the intensity of the focus, perhaps bring the back in the upright position. Maybe open eyes to clear that sleepiness, drowsiness, and just placing with the breath for another few rounds of incoming and outgoing breath. See if we can be as fully present with each in-breath and unfolding sensation of the outgoing breath. No matter how often our mind wanders, if we catch, just acknowledge and bring it back. Or at other times, just apply this brief checking in, monitoring, check to see if we're still with the breath or not. And then just, if not, bring it back to the breath more fully. And just making this adjustment as needed to sustain our attention here in the present with the breath. By attending to our incoming and outgoing breath and any other thoughts and so forth where our attention went when we notice, without judging, but just gently returning our attention back to breath and just resting there, aware of each in-breath and outgoing breath. Through this process, notice once again if there are any shifts that you notice internally, bringing attention to your chest, the shoulders, face, wherever you began in the beginning. See if there are any changes to your physical sensations, that inner body landscape. Does it feel any smoother, tender, more relaxed, and so forth? But also, beyond this physical, what we experience, is there a certain degree of peace, spaciousness, calm? A certain degree of that joy. Any degree of these changes, if we notice, knowing that this reflects our body and mind being more regulated, our nervous system, body, mind, emotions, more regulated, being in that zone, which may call the resilient or the well-being. This is where we feel better, we can function better, we can think better, and relate to others better. It's a skill that we can enhance with practice, like any other skill. So let's take a moment to dedicate any goodness that has unfolded from our practice here, or for that matter, that will unfold as we practice further, enhance this. dedicating this for greater good, for peace, healing, harmony, and happiness for all beings, for our continued growth in these skills, and to see these skills becoming part of our society, the flourishing in our society. And let's conclude by setting an intention. In this formal setting, that what we cultivated here, not to just leave it here, but bring that beyond question, beyond this formal session, into our everyday life. Just as we go about our life, from time to time, perhaps even setting intention like that for a few times, randomly, or certain times, just to briefly check in with our own body and mind, how we are feeling, what's going on. In those moments, if we do notice certain emotional dysregulation or so forth, or at times when we catch ourselves in a certain impulses and like that, perhaps in those moments we can just take a few seconds, perhaps a minute, to bring the attention to the breath or something else where we can anchor our attention that is pleasant or neutral. And then just by sustaining there a few moments to allow our body and mind to become more in the regulated state. It's through these micro moments of adjusting our body and mind, regulating our body-mind, that how these can eventually become more sustained states, traits, sustained capabilities, with which we can not only benefit ourselves, but we can be of source of benefit for others who are around us, who are in our lives. Thank you. Have a great day. Thank you. Thank you.